Yeah. Are you all excited? Brought you in the house early? My pretty girl? Yeah, there's my pretty Helen. Says, yeah, we're doing another talk, huh? Or we're just going to kind of wait just a little bit for everybody to join us. This is kind of a very casual drop in discussion. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of my spring routine and what I've been up to. And Helen has a big part of that as well. So we're going to have just a little fun, little discussion about what's been going on. How pretty girl. Yeah, get your exercise. So we don't.
We got 6 people have already found us.
Oh, 6 people have already found us. Well, wonderful.
Pretty good because we were hidden. We were like unlisted, and then we just went public, and then we went live. So they found us fast.
They did. Wonderful. Well, as I was starting to say, we're going to have a little casual discussion here about my springtime activities that we do with the foundation every year, and uh, and Helen's going to be real bouncy because she doesn't usually come in the house quite this early. A pretty girl. Yes, such a pretty girl. And do you think we should get started, or do you think we should wait a little longer?
Well, you could tell a little Subaru story. How'd your check thing go? Maybe.
Sure. Well, uh, last Saturday, uh, we went down and did one of my shows for the Red Rock Audubon Society. We were their Saturday evening keynote speaker for the event, and we brought, of course, Helen, and we brought Scout and Belle, and we did the whole show, the whole 2 hour Birds of Prey of the West program. We had a really good turnout, and everybody had a wonderful time. But the highlight to the show, which we did at the very beginning, is that the general manager of Findlay Subaru in St. George came to the event and presented us a check, a donation for our foundation. See, Findlay Subaru has chosen us for the last 10 years as their um, Share the Love local nonprofit charity. And so they've been donating to us. They've donated over $100,000 to our organization. And this year it was $14,500 that they donated to us. And so everybody at Subaru and Curtis, the manager, hey, thanks, guys. You guys have been just wonderful to us, and we appreciate everything that you did and have done for us over the many years. And Curtis, the general manager, came out and last year when we did our little groundbreaking ceremony and planted trees, he came out and again provided another donation to our organization as well. And so Subaru's been a major asset and a major contributor to our organization, and we're very grateful for their participation in what we do, and they've helped us a bunch. And so thanks, guys. We appreciate it. And so let's go ahead and we'll kind of get started here. Now, if anybody has questions, please feel free to post questions because we're going to talk a little bit about my spring activities with the foundation. Now, every spring, and I have been doing this here in Utah for 44 years. Every spring, my favorite thing to do is to get out in the backcountry and drive hundreds, if not thousands, of miles uh, and and identify hawk, falcon, eagle, owl nesting sites and document them. And if possible, I like to go out in the late winter, early spring when nesting starts, and to basically spot the birds and watch their courtships, and then from there I come back um, in later spring to see if the nesting has been successful, and so that's we're kind of right in the middle of all of that. Uh, though there are, because there's so many different species and so many different locations. We've got some of the species are, up on the top of the mountain at 7 to 9,000 feet in heavy wooded country. Some of them are way out in the west deserts. Some of them are in the steep canyon country areas. Some of them are on the agricultural areas, and so I don't get a chance to hit everybody every year. But this year, the big focus has been on peregrine falcon. That's what Helen is. Peregrine falcon and prairie falcons, and so I've been really going into their habitats, identifying the nesting sites, and kind of monitoring how they're all doing. And in the process of that, we have had some good successes. We've had some failures and some sad events, and it's just kind of part of the game. Now, you have to understand when I go out to these places, um, I don't go right up to a nest and rappel in and see what's going on. I stay a very long distance away. In fact, I've got my this is my spotting scope, and I've got a yes. I'm sorry. Is that in your way? Yes, but that's my spot. One of my spotting scopes, and I put this on a tripod, and I backpack this in quite frequently into the backcountry, and we set it up, and we look across the canyon. So we're nowhere near the nesting location, and again with also a good pair of binoculars and the spotting scope. I'm in the late winter, early spring. I'm interested in just spotting the pair. That's all I want to do. I just want to make sure that the pair is in the area that they should be nesting. And once I've identified that there is a pair in the habitat, uh, then I'll go back a couple of weeks later, and I will stay for an extended period of time and may go on several days, because now what I'm looking for is I'm looking for um, the mom and dad's behavior. I want to see their courtship. I want to see them pick a nesting site, and so that I've got a really good indication of the nesting site. And I want to see the female once she's chosen the nesting site. I want to see her start to incubate her eggs. And again, this is all behavior that we're watching for. As the birds are, like I said, I'm all the way across the canyon, far away from them. I'm watching their behaviors. I'm watching them, like I said, court and breed, and I'm watching the male and female looking in all the holes, trying to figure out which one they want to use this year, and and then the day that I see the female go into her hole, lay down, and not come back out. And if I'll go back another 2 or 3 days, and if she stays in that hole and doesn't come out, that means that she's got eggs, and that means that the breeding season is in full swing. And then we can basically document um, if they lay the eggs from the time that she starts incubating. We calculate about 33 days, and At 33 days, the eggs will be hatching, and then from the time the eggs hatch, then we can pretty well tell you, the age of the chicks and at what point it is safe um, to repel into the nest and either ban the chicks or as a falconer to choose a new falconry bird without significantly upsetting and damaging the nesting cycle. And yes, anyway, Helen here is a southern Utah Anato peregrine. This little gal, she's out of a captive breeding program, but her mom and dad were from the wild here in southern Utah. And one of the ways, it doesn't show up really well on the computer here, but one of the ways that we can tell that she's one of our southern Utah anatoms is her breast right here. See that little bit of rust? It's much darker in person than what you're seeing on the screen, but it's kind of a rusty colored breast with the black banding going across, and that's quite unusual, but it's actually quite common for our peregrines in this area. And so anytime I see somebody with a peregrine falcon, if it has these markings, I'm going, oh, that one probably came from southern Utah. And that one came from one of the peregrine nests that I monitor. And it is perfectly legal. Now, let me explain this to everybody so nobody gets mad. Um, the Anatom peregrine in the late 60s, population crashed. They almost went extinct. Falconers such as myself, we brought all of our peregrines together, created a breeding project. Since the early 70s, we have raised thousands and thousands and thousands of peregrines and have returned them back to the wild. The peregrine is the first animal to be removed from the endangered species list. So these are no longer an endangered species. And because the falconers dedicated millions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of hours to breed these falcons and return them back to the wild, we have peregrines. We have them all over North America now, and we have a very large population here in Utah. And so it is perfectly acceptable for a licensed falconer um, to put in for a drawing. And we have a drawing every year that allows a very few falconers, very few, to go into the wild and re- rappel down a cliff where there's a falcon's nest. Again, we're looking at the exact right moment, so we don't sufficiently disturb the birds that they'll abandon the nest because we don't want to damage the nest site and pull a young peregrine falcon at the right age and introduce that new falcon into falconry. And so her mom and dad were southern Utah Anatom peregrines that were used for falconry that then were put into a breeding project. And so she's from the breeding project from her mom and dad. And so she is a southern Utah Anatom peregrine, but was not born in the wild. And this year, much to my surprise, but also much to my excitement, is I drew out this year for the opportunity to get a young peregrine from the wild. And for the folks that have been with us for a long time, you remember Piper, and you remember all of my prairie falcons that I've had over the years that have been on many of the videos. Well, these were all native falcons from the wild that we would take and we would fly and exercise and make them into incredibly good hunters. And then they would go back to the wild, and then we would do another one. Well, peregrines, we can't do that with peregrines because you have to enter a drawing, and there's only 17 permits issued each year. And so I've drawn out for my peregrine permit, baby. And so I've been monitoring the peregrines in the area very, very closely. and I have one pair of peregrines that are they're my kids. I've been watching this pair of peregrines for more than 30 years. The peregrine nest is very close to my home. Um, I mean, it's close enough. I can ride my bicycle to this nest site, and so I go out in that direction. In fact, I take my birds out there and exercise them out in that area, and so they're they're kind of like my kids, and I know when they're doing well. I know when they haven't done well. Um, I know when they change mates, because what happens is they do pair bond for life. But if a mate does not survive the winter, the fall and winter, then the female or the male, whichever one survives, is capable of choosing a new mate. And so this year, we've got a new male at this pair of peregrines, and he is really interesting because he's not a typical southern Utah Anadrom peregrine. As I said, these guys, they kind of have the orange coloration of the breast that we've got right here. Well, this one is pure bright white. And so this is more of a northern peregrine, not a southern peregrine. So what probably happened is the male from the pair did not survive the fall and winter. Whatever happened, we don't know. And since it didn't survive, the female chose a new mate, and it was this really pretty little male peregrine that was migrating through, because they migrate, and they'll go you know down to the Texas coast and down into Mexico on their migration. And as he was migrating through, he found this pretty little female peregrine right here in southern Utah, and they courted, and they decided they'd liked each other really well, and so they have bred this year, and it's wonderful to see the new pair. What that does is that brings fresh genetics um, into the area, which is something that's really wonderful to see. And so we've got this beautiful pair now. Again, because they're so close to my home, um, I have an opportunity to go out there, oh, 3 times, 4 times a week, uh, and sit across the valley from them and watch with a spotting scope and time their nesting behaviors very closely. So I've got a really good idea what's going on. And I watched the pair courtship. I watched them breed. I watched them pick a hole in the cliff that they decided that that's where they're going to raise their babies, and it was just all wonderful. And so everything was good. I wrote down the date of when she started incubating, and then we go 33 days to hatch, and then we go another about 15 to 20 days for the chicks to be the appropriate age, and then and only then will I go into the eyrie and see if there's a beautiful little male, because I want a male. See if there's a beautiful little male there that it would be perfect for my falconry and for my and as a wildlife ambassador for my educational programs. Well, I went back about a week and a half later just to check on the kids and see how they're all doing, and tragedy had struck. And I saw the female; she was out up on the cliff faces, and I saw the male out on the cliff faces, and I'm going, what's going on? Something's wrong, because the female should be laying down tight on her eggs, incubating them, and she wasn't. And something catastrophic happened to her nest. Now I don't know what it is. Um, I don't know if a raven or something raided the nest. I don't know. It's a big recreational area where this particular nest is, and people do hard rock climb around that area. And whether somebody climbed into the nest and drove the parents out while they were still early in the incubation process, I really don't know what happened, but something catastrophic happened to that nest site. And so I do have other peregrine nests in the area that I've been monitoring, but this particular pair, these are kind of like I said, they're kind of my kids because they're so close to me, and I have been watching their lives from a distance for more than 30 years. So they're my friends, and I would really love the opportunity uh, to fly uh, a male from that pair. That would be, and to be honest with you, this is probably the last falcon I ever get for falconry because of my age, and because the birds are will live, uh, if all goes well, 20 plus years. And so this will be my, if all goes well, this will be my very, very last falconry falcon. And I really wanted that a little male. Now I always have a backup plan. We just catastrophically lost that pair, and makes me extremely sad. Now I've mostly flew prairie falcons, and I've flown a lot of prairie falcons. And again, I know where a lot of prairie falcons are, and so I was monitoring prairie falcon nest sites, and so I always have a prairie falcon for a backup. That if again something happens to the peregrines, the other peregrines that I know about are doing very well, but they're a bit more of a of a difficult climb to get to where the nests are. You're further back in the canyons. One nest I checked out was back in a heavily wooded canyon, and the birds are there and they're doing fine. But to hike back in some really rough terrain and then climb to the top of 1,000-foot mountain is almost to the point of beyond my abilities. And so we were out there, um, and checking on other opportunities. And so we decided I would certainly check my prairie falcons and see how they're doing as a possible backup. And so last was it last Sunday? It was yesterday. Yesterday, Susan and I took a beautiful drive out through the desert country, and went to one of my very, very favorite prairie falcon nests. I have had the opportunity to fly young falcons from that nest site in the past, and they've been really, really wonderful birds to work with, and I've thoroughly enjoyed them. And so we went out there. Now, this particular nest that we went to, the nest itself um, is only about 30 feet up a cliff face. And so they're not really high up on the cliff. And in fact, this particular nest, you can actually put up an extension ladder and climb up an extension ladder and get right to the nest site. So anyway, on yesterday when we were, the chicks should be hatched and everything, and they should be raising their young. Now I did want to go into the nest because the chicks are still going to be very, very young. They're typically ready about the 20th, but between the 15th and the 20th of May is when the chicks are at the right age. And again, I don't want to go into the nest site until the chicks are large enough and they can control their own body heat, and they are, won't be overly stressed, and the parents won't be chased off. And there's, like I said, a very delicate time that we can go in here and do this. So we kind of drove up and walked up underneath the cliff face, and again the nest is 30 feet up from the bottom into the big hole in the cliff. And I took my cell phone camera and I put it on an extension pole and raised the pole up to 30 feet, and then I very carefully lifted the pole um, up so that we could see the nest without actually going in and being too disruptive to see how old the chicks were. So we get a good idea of what our timing would be. And DG, you want to show them that video? Start. No, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. The white is the mute. See, we're getting up there. You can hear mom in the background. There you go. And what we have there is 5 eggs. And so once we got a good look at what was there, I lowered the camera down, and then Susan and I got out of there very, very quickly because we don't want to drive her off those eggs. The egg should hatch any second. And DG, do you have a close up of the eggs?
Okay, so we've got another video now that has like this the nest in slow motion. So do you want to go through that then?
Yeah,
And
let's go
it
through that.
and it shows like the eggs closer because you were mentioning there was something to see.
Yes.
Okay, so
So
let's
something
so and
very
the nest slow doesn't have any volume, so just let me know if you need it to stop or whatever, and otherwise I'll just let it play.
okay. Go ahead and let it play.
I mean, well, I mean you could talk over it obviously.
Absolutely. Okay, and here's the nest. We're running it in a little bit of slow motion. And what I want you to look at is the closest egg to us. The closest egg to us, there's a line of 3 and then a line of 2. The very front one, as we get closer, you'll see there's a little hole in that first egg. And what that little, there it is. You see that little tiny hole? The chick is pipping. And the first one of the line of 2 off to the left, you can see a piece of eggshell pushed out. That chick is pipping as well. And so they are at that moment they're hatching. And so that's all exciting. Our baby prairie falcons are coming out of the egg. Now Susan and I, you know, like I said, as soon as we got the video, we didn't even stop to look at the video. We got back, we just pulled the pole back down, and we went very, very quickly back to the car and drove away. And then once we got home, we were able to bring the video up and see exactly what we were looking at. And so I was surprised. These guys are running about 2 weeks late, and because we've had kind of an extended winter here, and because of that extended winter, it looks like my birds are nesting about 2 weeks later than normal. And so we've got the eggs, but yesterday they were hatching. And so, we got out of there, and that means that these chicks will be the appropriate age for me to go in, and if we're going to ban them, we can ban them. If I decide that something's catastrophic has happened to the peregrine nest, this would be my backup to get a little male prairie falcon for my wildlife ambassador and for my falconry. Now, I want you to notice something about this nest, which is quite unique. See, falcons, peregrine falcons, prairie falcons, they don't build a nest. They just basically find a small ledge or find a hole in a cliff, and they kind of what they call scrape, which kind of push the gravel around to create a little indentation in the bottom, but they don't ever bring nesting material back to the nest site. And so this particular nest um, was a raven's nest uh, late winter. And this is why they might have got a little bit of a late start, because these guys, this has been their nesting site for decades. And so ravens came in, they started to build a nest. The prairie falcons came in probably a couple of weeks later and said, "This is our site, and you guys get out of here. This is our nest site." And they drove the ravens away, and then they just nestle down, push all the grass and sticks aside to create a little scrape. And so that's why you see there's nesting material in a falcon's nest when there's usually not. So that's a kind of an unusual thing. But now like I said, the exciting news is that to be able to check and see that the eggs are hatching. That's wonderful. And I will not go back to this particular site for at least 3 weeks because I want mom and dad to raise the babies and be undisturbed. And that at 3 weeks they will be about 21 days old, and then we can, like I said, if we decide to band, we can band. If I do need to get a young falcon from this year, a young prairie falcon, then I've got them there. And so that's our backup nest. I can't show you the peregrine nest for the simple fact that they are on a cliff, and the nest is about 200 feet high. And so I, certainly don't want to disturb them. I don't want to rappel down. I don't want to bother them in any way. And so I have to rely on visual confirmation from across the valley uh, to make a good estimation as to the age. But with these little prairie falcon eggs, I know exactly they started to hatch yesterday. Now, prairie falcon eggs are a little smaller. They're about the size of a small chicken egg, and peregrine eggs are about the same size. And as you can see, they're kind of a light creamish brown color with dark speckles. And so that's very common among falcons to have their eggs marked like that. So that's our little falcon's nest, and these prairie falcons are almost as much family, even though they're several miles out. They're almost as much family as my peregrines are, that are my closest pair. Because, like I said, this particular pair I've watched again for more than 30 years, and it's just always excited to see that the birds are coming along. Now,
So can you clarify again how you said like so the first clutch of the peregrines you were watching had issues. Then you discovered these
yes,
prairie falcons, but then you still got another ace in the hole with those other peregrines. I forget if you covered that.
no, that's what I'm going to talk about now. And so now we're going to go back to the peregrines. Okay, the peregrines that had a catastrophic failure in their nest site. Um, I've been monitoring them from across the valley and watching their behaviors. I watched them go through a brand new courtship. I watched them breed. I watched them travel and look in all the different holes in the cliff faces, and they have chosen a second site. And so it's further down the cliff face. It's not where they were originally. In fact, it wasn't where they were originally the last few years. So this is a completely new hole that they've chosen. And right now, the birds are, like I said, I watch them breed. I watch them uh, pick the hole. I watch the female go in. Watch the female clean out her scrape from all the way across the valley to watch the female lay down and start to incubate. And she has been sitting very, very tight now for more than a week. And so things are looking very good, like they will have a clutch of babies this year, as long as nobody disturbs them, as long as nothing else catastrophic happens to the nest site. Like I said, I don't know what happened originally, but they will be late, and this becomes an issue. Um, the Most of the peregrines in this area, about the 20th of May to the end of May is about the right time, depending on how early they started nesting. Um, these guys originally, the chicks would have been the appropriate age of the 20th of May, right on schedule. Um, now this looking like the 20th of June. So that it took them a month to again go back through the courtship, do the breeding, find a new hole, and lay the eggs and start over again. So it took them a month to do that, and uh, they're down there. They're looking good. I go back there to observe, and I'm seeing exactly what I want to see, and that is basically nothing. And that's what I want to see. I want to see, the male just kind of hanging around up on the cliffs, just kind of relaxing, because he's going to get busy here when the eggs hatch, because he'll have to provide the vast majority of the food for all the babies and mom. But right now, the male is just kind of relaxing, and the female is in that hole, and she is sitting very, very tight. And I can go up the mountainside across the valley with my spotting scope and try to get up close to level with the nest site, and look across the valley, and I can see, um, it's in a dark hole in the cliff, but I can see her little white chin right there, that pretty little white chin. I can see that, and so I can see that little white speck move. That when she's just kind of looking around, uh, up in her nest site. So let's keep our fingers crossed that nothing else catastrophic happens to this pair of peregrines, that they can raise these babies, and that I will have an opportunity to pick just a cute little fluffy baby male, and have that truly last falconry experience of raising the chick and training it in falconry, and letting it fly free and go thousands and thousands of feet in the sky and dive vertically at 200 miles an hour and blow up pigeons, because that's what they do. And so we're excited that we'll hopefully have a new member of the family here, but it's almost a month and a half away still. Now, as I said, the prairies are kind of my backup, but there's an issue here. The prairies will be ready about the 28th of May, and that'll be the right age. And so um, the peregrines won't be ready till about the 20th of June, and so that means that I'm going to have to take a risk and get no bird at all, because I'll monitor the peregrines. If I go back to the peregrines tomorrow or the next day, and I see the female peregrine, out of the nest and up on the cliffs, and she's abandoned the new nest of eggs because something catastrophic happened, then I have the opportunity to go and choose one of those little prairie falcons. But if she continues to incubate and everything goes really, really well, and something catastrophic happens, let's say the 5th of June, the prairie falcon is going to be way too old, and it's not appropriate to go in when the chicks are of that age, because they'll jump out of the nest and they'll end up on the ground, and there'll be a real devastating issue going on. Um, and so you have a very, very narrow window of opportunity. And so the plan is to um, take the risk, and try to go for the little peregrine. Um, I have in the last 50 plus years, I have flown 20 prairie falcons, and have just loved them. They're just marvelous animals. I have had 4 peregrine falcons, and all 4 peregrines have been females, like Helen here. They've all been females. I've never flown a male peregrine, and so that's why I want a male. Um, I have found that with the prairie falcons, I've really enjoyed the males far more than the females. They're smaller and they're more agile and they're more aerial and they're just more fun to watch. And and so I really would like to have that opportunity to fly a male Anatan peregrine, um, to be able to make a comparison between male peregrines and prairie falcons. So that's kind of what we're
Yeah.
up to.
Can you talk about why, when you already have like the coolest golden eagle ever, the coolest Harris hawk ever, that you want a falcon, and then also why you're willing to risk missing out on a shore fire falcon for this other falcon?
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, falconry um, has a lot of styles to it. It's very, very old. It's about 4,000 years old. Because it is so old, falconers fly birds in very different styles, and these styles go back thousands of years. And so, you know, my golden eagle scout he's just truly my best friend. And we love him to death, and he's great for the shows. The problem with a golden eagle is he is so big that he doesn't have good agility. He doesn't move fast, and he's not agile. And really, the only thing that we have for a golden eagle to hunt is jackrabbits. And on a really, really good year with my golden eagle, we'll catch two or three jackrabbits. And so 99% of the time we go out, we don't catch anything. But it doesn't matter if we catch anything or not, because it's not about catching rabbits. It's about a relationship that I have with one of the most spectacular creatures on the planet. And so I love working with Scout. He's just truly a dear friend. Belle, on the other hand, Belle is sweet and she's wonderful, and I love her to death. And Belle is a jackrabbit killer. Belle, on a good year, she'll catch between 80 and 100 jackrabbits, and she'll eat her share. And then we bring the rest of the rabbits back, and we butcher them out for food for the injured wildlife that we care for. So she helps provide food for the injured wildlife. And so Belle is really very, very efficient. She flies right off my glove. She's a wonderful animal to work with. Um, but a falcon is different. A falcon, you don't fly a falcon because you want to put meat on the table. That's not why you fly a falcon. You fly a falcon because what you're trying to create is a very, very artistic flight. What you're looking for is a falcon that'll fly high in the sky, that'll just circle and ring up over your head and just go straight up and up and up and up over your head, 1,000, 2,000 feet up, and then when in good position, then we flush a duck, a pigeon, a pheasant, birds, because they hunt mostly birds, and then the falcon will roll over, dive vertically at 200 miles an hour, and at that 200 miles an hour, they will attempt to strike the quarry with their feet and kill it. Now, my hawk's far more efficient at taking game, and so the falcon uh, will never catch nearly as much food as my hawk does. It's just the way it is. The hawks are far more efficient hunters, but the style and the quality of flight, to watch a falcon come out of the sky at terminal velocity of 200 miles an hour is one of the most spectacular things you'll ever see in nature. And the nice thing is, um, I have the opportunity to participate. The falcon does what the falcon does, and that's fine, and that's wonderful. I don't require her to do anything other than what she does naturally, and so I get a falcon because I want that artistic flight, and so it's a very different process that we go through, and so it allows me to kind of experience all of the different aspects of what falconry is, and so that's kind of why I do what I do. And what was your other question, DG?
Oh, about why you're willing to risk perhaps losing these falcons that you showed the nest versus the peregrine.
The reason I'm willing to risk that is, a prairie falcon is a guarantee. I can guarantee you right now that I can go and get prairie falcon number 21. There's no no doubt that I can't just go and grab another prairie falcon and get a little male and have just an absolute wonderful time. But I have flown 20 of them, and I have had four peregrine falcons, and all four peregrines were all females like Helen. And I'll be really honest with you. Um, they've been wonderful birds. The quality of their flight, as compared to a really good, especially male prairie falcon, the quality of the flight with the female peregrines has not been as good. And so I would like this literally last opportunity um, to put all of my time and experience and expertise into a little male peregrine and see and really have the ability to say, okay, it's not peregrine versus prairie, it's actually male versus female. Because I would like to be able to say, I've got a male peregrine that is as much fun and as flashy and as stylish as a male prairie falcon. And so it's just it's my curiosity and wanting to see if a male is more fun than a female.
Can you talk about the experience for guests if they wanted to see falconry with the golden eagle versus the Harris hawk versus a falcon?
Yes, I do have people come out with me to go hawking. Now, hawking is the terminology that we use. Falconry is the process of training a bird of prey for the purposes of hunting. And the actual hunting is called hawking. And so when I'm hunting with a falcon, I'm hawking. When I'm hunting with a hawk, I'm hawking. When I'm hunting with an eagle, I'm hawking. So that to kind of clarify that a little bit for you. And so people do occasionally come out with me when I fly the birds. And my golden eagle scout, I have a little problem with people coming out with us because scout is um, he he was offended by a photographer, and eagles never forget and they never forgive, and so he was offended by a falconer, um, and he's been um, a little bit scary uh, when I've had other people come out with him, and I don't trust him with strangers. And so with me, he's wonderful and just a dear friend, but I'm not comfortable taking him out with strangers. Now, Belle, on the other hand, Belle is perfect. Belle, when people want to come out and go hawking with Belle, okay, fine. Belle is perfect. I give everybody their own glove. They gloves like this, and I says you just put on the glove, and if you hear a bell ringing behind you, just hold your hand up, and she'll fly land on your arm, and she'll use you as a portable perch, just like she'll use me as a portable perch. And so I can have, and again, we're talking of, two or three people at a time. We're not talking, 20, 30, 50 people in a group because that's would be unmanageable. And so the times that when people have come out with Belle, Belle has been sweet and polite and done her job, and people have really enjoyed watching Belle do her job. Now, the Falcon, on the other hand, is really good spectator. And so I've had lots of Falcons that I have flown that you go out to a fixed location out on the desert that has all the room in the world that you need for the Falcon to fly because they need vast open areas because they fly great altitudes and can travel great distances. And so you get out to my what I call my Falcon flying field, and I can have 50 to 100 people come out with my falcons, and and they just stand there quietly, and I get the falcon and I walk a little bit away from the people. I turn the falcon loose, and I can lure fly the falcon, which means the falcon will fly off away, and I swing kind of a leather pigeon, and that's the falcon's toy, and the falcon will come back and try to catch the toy, and the falcon will dive and climb and dive and climb and dive and climb and circle in and through the crowd, not carrying, just and not touch. It's just the falcon's going to pass you at 100 miles an hour. Do not move. Just stand there quietly, and she'll just go right past you because she's not interested in you. She's interested in her toy, and give people a real experience of having a falcon fly by their heads at 100 miles an hour is pretty exciting. And then once we get into late into the fall, then it's time to get her to take her altitude and teach her to fly 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet in the air, where she's just this little teeny tiny little pin speck up in the sky, and then throw, like I said, a pigeon or flush a duck or a pheasant. And as the birds are flying off, to watch that falcon roll over and fall at 200 miles an hour, attempting to hit that pigeon. And please understand, we're not interested in her catching the pigeon. We could care less. We're interested in the quality of flight. And so she's coming down 200 miles an hour. My pigeons fly against falcons all the time. They're trained for that. The falcon gets close. The pigeon twitches and moves to the side. The falcon misses. And once the falcon's below the pigeon's home free. The pigeon has all the advantage, and the pigeon goes back to the house, and the falcon comes back overhead to me, and I call the falcon down for her breakfast. And so that's very spectator friendly as well. And so if people want to come out and watch, the falcon fly or the hawk fly, especially if we get a new falcon this year, we'll be going through the entire training process, and that's just really fun to watch and to understand their thought processes. And so, I'm very, very excited with the possibility of a new young falcon this year and going through the entire process from start to finish fresh over again. And so we're really looking forward to it. And you can call and make an appointment, uh, and I can answer more questions then.
So is it very often, because you said that with your local pair of peregrines that you thought that the male was new to the region and he was migrating through? I mean, does that happen very often? Because you also talked about how peregrines in your region have specific characteristics.
Yes. Well, basically, all birds of prey, all of them, um, they do pair bond for life. But if their mate does not survive the fall and winter, if something happens to them, whether they get hit by a car or shot or electrocuted or whatever it is that happens to them, and they're unable to return back to the nest site, the surviving mate that is there can choose a new mate. And so the female, we don't know what happened to the male, but the female was still at the nesting site. And what's interesting about this pair is peregrines can be highly migratory, but this particular pair and some of the southern Utah birds will be year-round residents where they don't migrate out. And so she's been there. She did not migrate out. She's been a resident bird. And so now we have the migration birds traveling through the area. And so that little male basically saw our pretty little female native bird that did not have a mate. And he says, well, she's awfully cute. Maybe I need to hang around. And so instead of, migrating back up north to where he came from, he decided that she was cute and he's going to stay here with her. And so they have pair bonded, and he will stay there for the rest of their lives. And that's kind of the thing with my golden eagle scout. Um, my golden eagle scout came from Wyoming, and he was what they call a depredation bird. A farmer felt he was a threat to his livestock, and I was called in to go to Wyoming and trap him and remove him. But he had to be guaranteed that he never ever comes back to Wyoming, because if he goes back to Wyoming, the farmer has the right to shoot him, and that's a bad thing. So, Scout gets to fly. He gets to fly in falconry. He's my bird, and he and I work together very, very well. And he's bonded to me, so he stays with me. But we do fly him through the courtship season, which is mid-January into February is the courtship season. And if he finds a pretty little lady eagle that's cuter than I am, he will fly away and never come back. He has that right. He can leave. I'll be heartbroken if Scout ever leaves me, but he has that right to do so. And so, Scout and I've been together for 17 years, which just absolute proof that I'm adorable. And so that's why he sticks around, is because I make his life easier and better, and he basically exploits me, and that's perfectly fine with me. And so, whenever we're flying these birds, they can migrate out. If I get a new falcon this year and I fly it for a couple 3 years, and the falcon decides, that it wants to go find a mate, it'll leave. That's perfectly okay. That's its right.
So how come some peregrines would migrate and some wouldn't? Is it just about mates or?
Well, yeah, it's you'll find that in kind of all birds of prey species, where in fact you find this in waterfowl. You get these big migrations of ducks and geese and those kinds of things migrate through, but then you find there's just some of them that just stay, and it's that hardwiring that causes them to migrate just doesn't seem to affect them, and they'll just stay and be resident. I know food has a lot to do with it. Is if there's a plentiful amount of food available, then they don't feel pushed to head south. And so I would assume that the peregrines that we have here, because we're in southern Utah, we're not up north, so we don't have as severe winters, and so they don't. There's a food source year round, so they don't feel as forced to migrate. And then oftentimes when they start their migration, they'll follow their traditional migration, which could be thousands of miles, even though they might find a really good food source, 100 miles south. They'll still go thousands of miles because they've started the migration, and they're hardwired to do that. So oftentimes these guys, we do have what we call resident populations, and so this pair of peregrines that I'm talking about is a resident pair.
So can we see Helen put her wings out? And did you want to show some pictures?
Yeah, you can see. Let me get her over here in front of us here. Yeah, try to get her in the frame here without hitting the computer. Yeah, she's a beautiful little bird, little pointy wings, and it's so sad because she's such a sweetheart. It is so sad that she could never be allowed to fly. Because of her genetic issues. She has a lot of genetic problems, and she's mostly blind, and she has a talon that turns up instead of turns down, and she has some feathers on her wing right here that are out of place. Hit the frame here. See, these feathers are out of place, and that's just drag, and so she has a lot of little genetic issues. She's a wonderful, wonderful wildlife ambassador. She's just terrific for doing our school programs and scout programs and that kind of stuff, but she can never be allowed to fly free. And so, we just, she sits in the house, she watches TV. She got a perch here in the corner of the living room where she just kind of hangs out, and just a sweet member of the family. And so she has a pretty pleasant existence, just to kind of hang around and be a cute little falcon. And so the new male will have to work for his dinner. You want to go back to your perch, little girl? I did bring a couple of pictures to kind of show you guys what a falcon's nest looks like. Let me put her up. There you go, sweetie. There you go. Now this is I'm not sure how good this will show up for you guys, But if you look at this picture closely, let's turn this way, I guess. There we go. Now this is really typical of a peregrine nest site, and this is the pair of peregrines whose nest failed, and this was the nest that failed. And what you'll see is right here, you, you'll see the opening, and you see the little dark area. That's Mama Peregrine flying into her nest right there. And like I said, unfortunately, that nest had some kind of a catastrophic failure, and is not no longer there. Many of the peregrine nests that I come across are so large that you can almost stand up in them. And this one, you can see from this picture here, how truly high this is. You know, go all the way up. You can almost stand up in that nest site, and that's very, very typical. A lot of the peregrine nests that I have, another thing that we kind of watch for oftentimes is they like to have a little bit of greenery, a little bush or something in front of the opening. And so this one doesn't have the greenery in front of the opening, but the hole that they're in now does. And so that's quite interesting. But this particular picture was taken again across the valley, and was taken with my 800 millimeter uh, telephoto lens. It's the biggest one that Nikon makes, and so that's the only way I could get this kind of a picture without being close enough to disturb the birds.
So, does that nest appearance and location give you any clues as to why something bad happened or what kind of predators they face?
Well, that particular location um, is right in the middle of a big recreational climbing area where people, um, you know, technical climb with ropes and carabiners and pitons and all of that kind of stuff, and they climb all over that rock. And the guys have been really great. I've talked to several of them over the years, and asked them. It says, this is, here's where the falcon's nest is, and if you could please not climb over at the falcon's nest, I'd greatly appreciate it. And the vast majority of these guys have been very, very polite and courteous, and they don't want to disturb the falcons any more than anybody else does. Now, that's not to say that everybody's that way, because there are always bad apples in every batch, and so I like I said, I don't know exactly what happened to that nest, but something drove the parents out, and they had to start over again. And this is the same falcon's nest. Um, get over here where I can get. There we go. And what you're seeing up here, right there above my finger, that's the hole that I showed you that she was using. Now there's several holes on this cliff face that is suitable for peregrine falcons, and so over the last 30 years they have chosen several different locations to build the nest. Um, but this is the first time that I've seen them driven out um, while they've just laid their eggs, and so something happened to drove them away. There have been, and this is the sad part, there have been times where um, falconers who, let's say, aren't quite as reputable as they should be, to end up, um, my you know, I've got three friends that want peregrines, and there's a historic nest in southern Utah that we know about, and so let's go down there, and they'll take all the chicks from the nest. And when they do that, oftentimes mom and dad, at a failure like that, especially when they've had chicks, if they do have a failure like that, they will leave the area and not return. And that's happened here a few times over the years, where the nest has been stripped, but these are very, very determined parents, and they try really, really hard to stay up to maintain this site in this territory. So like I said, I kind of watch over this pair, and if I see someone that's eyeing the cliff face with a pair of binoculars and they look pretty serious about that, I'll I'll walk up and I'll visit with them a little bit, and if they're legal, if they have the proper permits and stuff, and they drew out legally, there's not a thing that I can do other than try to encourage them as to the most appropriate time, so as not to overstress the nest, to go ahead and take their one chick. If these guys will lay anywhere from 1 to 5 eggs. 3 or 4 is considered the normal, and so if you pull one chick and they've got 3 or 4 babies, you pull one chick. The parents still have a lot of work to do to raise the other 2 or 3, and so you're actually making the process easier for the parents to raise the rest of the chicks more successfully. But if you've got just one chick in the nest and you pull it, then the parents say, well, we're not going to nest here again because someone stole our chicks. And so by law, you have to have at least 2 chicks in the nest, and you're only allowed, even if there's 5 chicks in the nest, you're only allowed to pull one. And so there's very restrictive conditions in order to do this properly, and everybody needs to follow the rules. And so we hope that they'll do this.
Can you list all the ways a new falconer has to acquire a bird and which one you think is best?
Well, there's only a couple of 3 ways to acquire a bird as a falconer. Now, here in the United States, you know, we are allowed to pull a bird from the wild. Now, there are several countries in the world that's illegal. You can't take a bird from the wild. Um, but the countries that you can't take a bird from the wild have an advantage because they have um, less restrictions when it comes to importation. And so they can import birds and captive raise them and then sell them to falconers. Um, and so they have access to a lot of absolutely beautiful exotic, hawks and falcons and eagles that that falcons in the United States will never have access to because of our very very restrictive import policies we have here in the United States. But other countries cannot go take a bird from the wild, where in the United States you can, which kind of helps offset that a little bit. As a beginning falconer, there is only one truly acceptable method, and there's only, in my opinion, one truly acceptable bird, and that is to trap a passage. Now, a passage is a young bird that mom and dad are no longer feeding, that it's on its own and it's on its very first migration. And so a passage bird and a passage red-tailed hawk is the only bird. So if somebody decided they would like to be my student and apprentice under me in falconry, and you have to apprentice for 2 years, if they want to do that, the only bird I will permit them to have is a red-tailed hawk and a passage red-tailed hawk. Again, one that's on its first migration, that is no longer being cared for by mom and dad. And this way, the bird has already learned to hunt. It's already feeding itself and taking care of itself. You trap it, you train it. If you're unsuccessful and the bird gets away, all you've done is interrupt its lifestyle for a little while, but you will not have harmed anything. And the bird just goes on its way and it's a wild bird. Um, a bird from a nest, like what I will be pulling, you need a significantly greater amount of expertise. Um, you need to raise the bird in such a way that it doesn't imprint on you, um, but it still accepts you as its falconry partner. And so there's a lot of techniques that we use to get these birds to um, work with us. A bird that is imprinted can be extremely dangerous. Um, a good example, if you take a young peregrine falcon that I'm looking at, take a young peregrine falcon, and the bird becomes imprinted on you. Basically, it's very much the same as your like mama falcon. And young peregrine falcons, young red-tailed hawks, young golden eagles, young goshawks, it doesn't matter. Young birds of prey, when you become very, very belligerent to their parents. Basically, once the birds are starting to fly around, they'll follow mom and dad around, and they steal food from mom and dad. Mom or dad catches a pigeon, and they're on the ground eating the pigeon. The babies fly down, beat up the parents, steal the food. And when the parents are sick and tired of putting up with their belligerent children, mom and dad migrate, they leave, and the babies are left on their own. And this is one of the reasons that 80% of all birds of prey do not survive the first year, because the first year they have to learn everything, and there's so many dangers out there for them. If they get nearly hit by a car, then they're going, well, cars are bad, I'm going to stay away from cars. But if a car hits them, they're dead. They don't know what a power line is. They don't know what a fence is. They don't know what a window is. Um, and so that very first year, like I said, a good example, you saw the 5 prairie falcon eggs. If all 5 chicks hatch, the odds of all 5 chicks leaving the nest is very slim. And they got 5 chicks there. Generally, mom and dad have to provide food for all of those babies. Those babies eat a horrible amount of food, just beyond your comprehension. And in the process of doing so, mom and dad can't feed all the babies, and the strongest and most aggressive ones eat first, and the ones that are not as strong and not as aggressive will starve to death. And so that nest with the 5 eggs in it, if all 5 eggs hatch, uh, on average 3 chicks will fledge, will grow up to full grown to fly away, and then maybe one will survive the first year. So the odds are pretty stacked against them. And so when a falconer moves in, and again, in my little pea brain here, that's one of my motivations, that I see those 5 eggs. In 3 weeks, if there are 5 chicks in the nest, mom and dad aren't going to be able to raise them. There's at least 1 or 2 that are going to starve to death. And so there's a real heavy motivation for me to say, oh, I've got to go take one of those chicks and make it easier for mom and dad to raise the rest of them. And so I can fly a new little prairie falcon, have a great time with it, and fly it for a season or 2, and then get it back in the wild. And now it's got a 90% chance of survival. And so we actually put more birds back than we take. And so there's a lot of kind of ethical and moral issues that you have to struggle with. Do I say, will the prairie falcons need me because they got 5 babies, and the peregrines got 3 babies, so they don't need me as bad, so I should leave the peregrines and just take the one of the little prairies? That's an ethical question that you have to deal with. Or do I take the, where they've got 3 babies or 4 baby peregrines, and they've got this beautiful little male, and that's what I've really, really want to try. After 50 years and never flown a male peregrine, that's the one I really want to try. Do I give into that, to my own personal desires? There's a lot of questions, ethical questions that we have to deal with, and so
Uh,
it's not just straightforward.
so I was thinking, because we've gone an hour and 15 minutes, so maybe we should think about if you want to kind of do a follow up, and maybe we can clarify dates and what you're looking at and when we might get back to Peeps to see what's going on.
Yeah, actually, I do plan to take all of you guys with me. So on this adventure, um, the nest that these peregrines are in, um, my wife Susan made me swear that I will not do the rappel. I will not hang off a 200-foot cliff. She keeps reminding me that I'm old, and that it's unsafe. Though I have been doing this for 50 years, and so I'm making arrangements for some of those guys that I know that rock climb to the technical climbing and stuff. I'm making arrangements to have one of those guys, and we're going to set up a crew, hopefully of 4 people, where we'll have one person across the valley spotting it, so to make sure that the person who does the rappelling goes down in the right spot so we can get to the nest site. Have me, I'll probably be at the bottom right underneath the nest, so that when a chick is picked, they lower it down to me and I can check it out, make sure it's the one I want before we take it. And then the person who's doing the rappelling, and then a fourth person that who is a safety person there for belay ropes, and then when the rappel is over, to be able to collect the equipment and then hike around off back off the cliff. And what this does is, this with a 4-man team, this will allow us to get there, get down the cliff, choose the appropriate chick, get out of there really fast. And so we're kind of putting together a little team of skilled individuals that'll help me pull a chick. I have two. In fact, I need to thank someone. I don't remember who sent this one to me, but I have two of these. Here it is. I bought one, and then someone sent me one, and this is a action camera that you wear like glasses, and I've been working with these right now, getting uh, to use them comfortably. I will be wearing one of these when we retrieve the young falcon, and the individual climber will be wearing one of these, and we're going to video the whole opportunity, the whole event, and so you guys will be able to hopefully come with us and see and experience this adventure with us together. So that will be mid to late June. I don't, like I said, we right now, I've got my dates logged in as to when she started incubating, and again, that could be off by a couple of days either way. Um, when she's the next thing that we're looking for, when the eggs hatch, and Dad will fly out, catch something, fly back. Mom and Dad will scream at each other, and the female will fly out, and the male will drop the food. We call it a food exchange, and the female will take the food, and she'll fly back into the hole and feed her babies. And when we see our first food exchange where she's feeding babies, that will be the date that I know that the eggs are hatched, and then I go 15 days, because the state requires that I pull a chick between 10 days and 18 days. So I've got a week. And so we shoot for 15 days, which is kind of right in the middle of that time period. So therefore, off a day or two in either direction, we'll still be within the right criteria to take the chicks appropriately and legally, is what we're looking for. So yeah, excited to take you guys with me. If anybody has any questions, I'll answer them for you.
Okay, yeah, and anybody can send any other questions to info@gowildlife.org at any time, and we can add them for next live stream that we suddenly pop up for. Otherwise, we're all good.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I think we're good. Thanks for popping in, guys. I'm sorry it wasn't scheduled, but we just thought, oh well, let's bring you up to date with the silly stuff that I'm doing. So, thanks for joining us. If you have questions, send me an email.